I see comments like these all the time. You're complaining about the animations not having enough quality. Complaining about something that has little effect on the gameplay is dumb. How about generating discussion on something important that the game lacks? Keyword, important. Yes, the animations are literally the least important part. They claim animations for the Pokemon are not important, when the animations are the only thing that bring the Pokemon to life. The animations breathe soul and personality into the Pokemon models, and that, in turn, allows them to be more expressive. But instead of trying to explain to you guys with words why animations are important, I will instead show you exactly what I'm talking about. I've noticed in the comments that a lot of you guys never got the chance to play Pokemon Battle Revolution, or PBR for short. In fact, a large majority of you have no idea what PBR even is. Coming across all these comments, it dawned on me with the realization of why many of you are so complacent with bland, low-quality animations. If you were hand-fed garbage from a young age, and you grew up eating garbage, you would think that garbage tastes pretty good. But the second you're introduced to high-quality food, you'll realize that garbage actually tastes really bad. The logic behind this analogy can also be applied to animations. If you are only aware of the low-quality animations found in GameFreak games, and have nothing to compare them to, you'll begin to presume that the GameFreak animations look pretty good, when in reality they are heavily lacking in quality. And most of them are absent of expression, even though GameFreak claims otherwise. The word expression has been tossed around a lot, but we haven't really truly explored what expression and expressiveness actually means. We are going to compare idle animations found in Pokemon Battle Revolution for the Wii to the GameFreak idle animations that have been present in every single one of their games for the past 6 years. As a friendly reminder, all of these GameFreak animations that you're about to see will be present in Sword and Shield, because they are ripping all of these animations. That's of course assuming that the Pokemon showcased are even in the game, because there's no national dex. This is Kecleon's idle animation from Pokemon Battle Revolution. Right off the bat, you can see that Kecleon is chock full of expression just from the twitchy and eccentric movements that it makes. Genius Sonority, the developers of Pokemon Battle Revolution, did an excellent job of conveying the twitchy eye movements of an actual chameleon into Kecleon's idle animation. The overall impression of Kecleon's idle animation gives off the sense that it has a sporadic personality. Now let's take a look at GameFreak's Kecleon idle animation in comparison. So yeah, that's GameFreak's animation. They stripped Kecleon of all of his personality, all of his expression, and they replaced it with literally nothing. If you take a look again at the PBR animation, you can see that there's a lot going on here. Kecleon has the twitchy head movements. He also moves his arms in a circular pattern. He moves his hips and his legs to convey some kind of funky dance. The fleshy part on the top of his head also moves when he flicks his head, and he also slightly opens his mouth near the end of the animation. If we go back to the GameFreak Kecleon, you'll notice that he's a lot more static. This static-like posture is what I'm referring to when I mention that GameFreak's animations are of lower quality with less expression. It's really hard to bring out Kecleon's personality when it's just standing there. GameFreak has seen what Genius Sonority has done. They actually have an animation in here that is inspired by what Genius Sonority did. Take a look at this. Would you look at that? Kecleon is actually alive. GameFreak took inspiration from Genius Sonority's twitchy head movements. I'm not even sure if this animation is seen in the games anywhere. My first time seeing this animation was when I loaded up all the animations on my computer. But as you can see, GameFreak is clearly capable of animating their Pokemon. This animation isn't nearly as good as the PBR animation, but it's still a lot better than nothing. This animation serves as a much better idle animation than the one that GameFreak went with. There's yet another example of an animation that is better than the idle animation that GameFreak ended up with. Take a look at this. I believe this animation is from Pokemon and Me, and it has Kecleon swaying back and forth. This animation makes Kecleon seem a lot more playful and a lot more carefree. GameFreak has all of these animation assets, so I cannot fathom why they decided to go with such a static idle animation. Is it apathy? Is it incompetence? I really don't know. Next up is Starme. Starme always had a really cool idle animation. All of its appendages move freely from one another, and its star in the back spins around. Starmie's idle animation gives off the impression that it's very fast, and it also gives off the impression that Starmie is just a cool Pokemon overall. Let's take a look at GameFreak Starme and see how it stands up. It just stands there, lifelessly, devoid of expression, personality, and soul of any kind. Starme is another classic case of GameFreak IS. That's a condition where a Pokemon is stripped of its personality and can no longer be expressive. Now I know what you're gonna say, but Distant Kingdom! There's over 800 Pokemon! It's way too hard for GameFreak to animate Starmie's star moving. Oh, I'm sorry. It's way too hard to do what now? That's right, GameFreak has already animated Starmie's star moving. Starmie's star spins in 3 separate animations. This one, which I believe is from Pokemon Me. This one is when Starmie is summoned from the Pokeball. And then it spins in this crazy running animation. GameFreak has the tools, they have the time, they have the staff, and they have the capabilities to animate these Pokemon. GameFreak just makes very odd decisions. A lot of the Pokemon Me animations are extremely detailed, and a lot of them are of high quality. But when it comes to the battle animations like the idle animation or the damage animation, the animation quality dips, which is odd because the player spends half the game doing Pokemon battles. So you would think that the animations found in Pokemon battles would be of higher quality than animations found in Pokemon Me, which is an optional side mechanic. But GameFreak did the exact opposite. The saddest part about Starmie is that GameFreak used to care. GameFreak animated Starmie's star moving in its Pokemon Crystal sprite on the Game Boy Color all the way back in the year 2000. GameFreak also animated Starmie's star spinning in its idle animation of its sprite in black and white on the DS all the way back in 2010. Just take a minute to let all of that sink in. Hariyama's design is inspired by sumo wrestlers. The yellow cloth-like object on Hariyama is inspired by the sumo wrestler belt called Kesho Mawashi. Sumo wrestlers are also typically on the heavier side because the heavier you are, the easier it is to push someone out of the ring. That's why Hariyama is so thick. So, with all that in mind, Genius Sonority, being the geniuses that they are, no pun intended, based Hariyama's idle animation off of the sumo wrestler's stomp, called Shiko. Shiko is used as a training exercise and is also performed as a ritual to drive demons away. Hariyama's idle animation really complements its design, and further accentuates its personification of being a sumo wrestler. Let's see how GameFreak handled Hariyama. It just stands there, lifelessly, devoid of expression, personality, and soul of any kind. If you haven't noticed a pattern, GameFreak's animations use little to no animations at all. That is exactly why these animations are considered low quality animations. They're not really animated. The models are almost completely static. I know what you're gonna say, but Distant Kingdom! There's over 800 Pokemon! It's way too hard for GameFreak to animate Hariyama doing a sumo wrestler stomp. Oh, I'm sorry. It's too hard to do what now? GameFreak has already went out of their way and animated a lot of these Pokemon. They have access to these animation assets. They just choose not to use them. I hope this video helped to clarify what the terms expression and quality mean with regards to animation. Animation is important because it brings the Pokemon to life. It fleshes out their personality, which allows them to be more expressive. If you believe that Pokemon shouldn't have the ability to be more expressive, you honestly don't care about Pokemon, and you aren't a true Pokemon fan. Always remember, you guys, don't settle for less. Fight for more. Thanks for watching.